What's up, guys? It's your boys Wokey back at with some more of the Chris Watts videos. And I still can't believe, after all the information that is out there, which is, there is quite a bit, but there's not a lot of it on NK. But the stuff that we know, there are still people that will defend NK when there is so many things pointed at her that are wrong. The deletion of messages, photos, emails, her talking to her friends, telling them to delete stuff. She told Chris to delete stuff. She had her father in the room for some stupid reason. Her mannerisms, when she says Shanann. I mean, the list goes on and on. We're going to take a look at it even more. But her lies that continue on with her interviews, I should say, not interrogations. The 3 interviews that she had, one outside. Why would you have it outside? The second one was with her dad. And then the third one, she was pretty much shooting the breeze with an investigator. And yet, we are apparently wanting to have a witch hunt on NK when we can see all the signs. It's not myself. Or not just myself. It's thousands, if not millions of people. She's literally probably in the top 20 hated women ever to exist. And then we're going to show you even more of why. So with that being said, make sure you guys grab a chair, get comfortable. Also, don't forget to subscribe on the channel by hitting that white bar icon down the bottom right. Hit that bell icon next to it. So when I do post videos like this one, you guys will get that little ring notification that Wokey myself has posted that video. Then you guys can watch, comment, like, and share. And again, thank you so very much for that continued love and support that you guys show on this channel every single day. I can't thank you guys enough. Keep doing what you guys are doing, and we'll continue to keep growing. Now, most of this video is going to be my personal thoughts, inquiries, theories, and so forth. But we are going to have a little bit of help from Michelle After Dark, a great YouTube channel. Definitely go over to her channel, give her some love. Link is in the description. Watch her old stuff, watch her new stuff. Definitely is a worthwhile to watch. But starting off the bat, I want to take a look at these text messages. Now, these are very limited, but there are more that are out there. These are just a snippet of what's to see. Now, if we take a look at it, if I zoom in a little bit on these, you guys can see that, wow, I knew it. And I blanked out the stuff that was more needing to be censored because I'm not posting that on my channel. I knew it, that blank H-O-E, well, they spelled it wrong. It's W-H-O-R-E. She was always around Chris. I seen her with my own eyes. Now, how many different times did she state in the interview when she was talking with the interrogators that nobody knew about her affair with Chris? That it was a secret. It was hidden. It was not hidden. There was many different employees that knew about their snags, their butt stuff, their shindigs, whatever have you, because they didn't keep it PDI, or what is it called? PDI? No. When you're like doing stuff in front of people. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. But she knew that she saw it with her own eyes, or these people saw them flirting and doing stuff behind their back, and it's like, well, first of all, why didn't anybody go to Shanann? Couldn't anybody have told Shanann, hey, your husband's doing something behind your back, you need to like figure it out? Why didn't anybody tell Shanann? I know it's probably, they thought too, that it's none of their business. I'm going to stay out of this. They figure that stuff out. But anything little could have helped this whole situation. Shanann well, she probably did find out about NK or a mistress. I don't think she actually knew who it was. Chris probably just said, I'm not in love with you. There's somebody else. And she's like, who? Another woman. It could have been that. I don't think Shanann actually knew of Nichol Kessinger, which is very sad to think about. If you look on the other side, it means she's a cheater. She wasn't the one cheating. That's the only thing I stand against for. She wasn't the one that was cheating. It was Chris. She was just being a narcissistic manipulator and had Chris be, obviously, the cheater. But she wasn't actually a cheater unless she was messing around with Jim too, didn't tell Jim, and that's why she said leave Jim alone, is because she didn't want Jim to know about the other man in her life, Chris Watts. Could that be something? Who knows? Well, I got that, or I get that, but she's legit blank Chris Watts, and it's the F word. She's legit. Apparently, there's some people in some messages that literally stated that they saw them having schnooky, butt stuff, whatever have you, at Survey 319. Is that legit? We have no idea. Does that matter? No, it does. Who cares about that part? We care about her possible involvement. She's a terrible human being. I won't be surprised if she helped him kill her. She's hideous. She gets mad over little crap. Yep, always acting like a couple and lovey-dovey S word. I forgot to blank that one out. At work, and everybody knows it. So if everybody knew about it, why didn't anybody say anything about it? Those are just 2 messages. I have more. I'm going to eventually release them as well. But employees knew about this. Employees were also interviewed, interrogated. They didn't really say that they knew about the whole NK Chris Watts thing. Pretty much everybody just kind of like they didn't say nothing. Come on, guys. You guys probably gossip all the time about other people and who's sleeping with who and stuff like that. You can't tell me nobody said nothing. Anadarko, obviously, there was the fact that Anadarko came forward to investigators to state that this mistress was involved with Chris Watts because they knew as well. So NK was like, oh my gosh, I gotta fix this. So she went forward and said, I need to talk to you guys. I'm the mistress. Let's talk. But again, looking at all her stuff, which I watched all day today, I literally spent like 4 to 5 hours watching most of her interviews again. Excuse me. None of her stuff that she tells investigators actually helped. She barely said Shanann's name. She lied like an habitual liar over and over and over and over. If I could, I literally started counting how many lies that she had. Like, I started running out of paper. Okay? That's how sad this is. And again, all of the signs are there of something amiss. Something's brewing. Something is there. And yet, the investigators, not all of them, I'm not blaming all of them, and the DA were like, we're good. Like, I've seen people get put away for far less. I've seen people get put away for MJ, Mary Jane, you know, the green stuff, for 20 years. But yet we've looked at how many different things professionals, the detectives, the lawyers, they've seen. There's federal crimes that she's committed. And they didn't go after her. So, again, we want to also look into what Chris Watts really thought of Nichol Kessinger. He has pretty much blurted it out that Nichol Kessinger had her negatives, as in bipolar, being a child. I'm not even going to play that giggle because it's ridiculously grotesque. But again, I'm not into this as a witch hunt. I'm in this because I would like investigators to properly interrogate her to find out if she is guilty or innocent. And then that's why there's people that actually defend her, and they call us NKers, like, because we are so out to get her. No, we know, we can see that there's fault. And people have literally mentioned to us that we're just trying to get attention. I could care less about the attention. I just want her interviewed and interrogated properly. And they just continuously are defending her for what? Like, they say, oh, the phone ping is because she went to work. She didn't talk to Chris because she was talking to Jim. Like, some of the defending questions and answers don't make sense. A whole bunch of other YouTubers have showed the timeline of NK and Chris Watts. It makes no sense. I feel like we're beating a dead horse. Like we're continuously making these claims, which we feel that are 100% correct, and we're literally beating that horse that's already dead. Because they don't want to hear us. They don't care. With the whole thing that happened right now with the Watts house, I'm calling it the Watts house, okay? The Watts house, Miller's house, whatever have you. Something is in that house. NK put it there. We've seen in an interview and a questionnaire that Chris stated that NK did something weird with some of her friends down in that basement. We've seen the Amityville horse. I hate to compare the Amityville horror house to the Watts house just because of the sweetness and the innocence of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and baby Nico. So to help with this information, to show more about Nichol Kessinger, oh my goodness, we're going to watch this Michelle After Dark snippet right now. So with that being said, let's take a look.
Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. This is Michelle here with another video. I'm back to the letters from Christopher from the book The Murders of Christopher Watts,
which we've obviously read.
In this video, I want to read you what Chris really thinks about Nichol Kessinger, as in what he thought of her at the time he was writing these letters throughout 2019. And it's interesting that his attitude towards her, by the time he was writing this letter at least, it's out of this infatuation phase, putting her above Shanann and the girls.
He was addicted.
Which we might argue is one of the reasons why the murders occurred in the first place. You know, perhaps he got himself into a situation he felt he couldn't get out of. Without his involvement with Nichol Kessinger, he wouldn't have gone on to murder his family. Or,
just to let you know, it's right here. She had a small group of friends that she didn't tell me about. They were dark and did some dark things. Dating.
Maybe he would. We could argue that maybe Nicky was just an unfortunate catalyst and it would have happened anyway. Perhaps not on that day, but it might have happened at some point in the future. We can only speculate on that. I am going to do some speculations. I am going to give my thoughts on this, but I'm going to try to keep it factual and not too theoretical.
Amen.
I understand that there's a lot of talk in the true crime community, the people who are focusing on the Chris Watts case. At the moment, in the last kind of 24 hours, there's been a potential sighting of Nichol Kessinger. I'm not going to speculate on that in this video. So
and who cares if we know where she
is in the title and you thought it's something about the new sighting, then I'm afraid not. I'm afraid this is looking at just one letter talking about what Chris thought about Nicky and some of my speculations. With that said, it says, Dear Sherilyn, hello again. I hope this letter finds you doing well. That's always his opening line. Thank you for the 2 songs you sent. You Say I Am and Be Still. I'm sure the songs will take on a new meaning once I can hear them with music, although the lyrics are good all by itself. I'd really like to see Sherilyn's letters. I'd really like Sherilyn to make those available because I think it would give these letters more concrete context.
Like somebody else, not like Sherilyn Cadle, but like a new person. Maybe like a guy. See what he says. I mean.
So I hope at some point in the future she does make those available. So he goes on to say, you ask if there's anything I haven't talked about in regards to Nicky. Honestly, I'm not sure what I've said and what I haven't. Yeah, when we spin a web of lies, sometimes we do forget what we've said and what we haven't said and who we've said it to. And, you know, it's difficult to keep a story going. Yeah. But this is what I know. She had a small group of friends that she didn't tell me about. They were dark and did some dark things. What does he mean by dark things? There's been lots of speculations whether she was into Satanism, whether she was into witchcraft. You never know with Chris, do you?
But
you know, what does he mean by dark? Maybe he's led a little bit of a sheltered life, and maybe the sexual liberation that he was experiencing with Nicky, you know, she was Googling sexualized things.
She also called a guy that was like 73 years old her sexual liaison or something like that. And I'm like, who does this? Like, who? Can you just be normal?
She was watching pornography. Perhaps it was something to do with sex, or maybe it was to do with drugs, or to do with
She
both.
Googled
Maybe
butt
she
stuff.
had a small group of friends that were maybe drug takers. I'm speculating, but I just
Trying to
want
make
to
it
know
factual.
what we mean by dark things. She didn't tell me a lot about them.
When we hear dark things, what do you mean? What do you think by dark things? I want to know what you guys think. When you hear dark things, what does that entail for you?
Till the end. So why right at the end? What's the end? Is that the lazy dog night out? Because he has said that could have been the turning point. That if he'd gone to
The
the
game,
Rockies game that he told people
he
he
would have
was
been
going
fine.
to, or he'd gone to the other game that he was offered a ticket to by his friend Jeremy Lindstrom, that would have kind of opened his eyes. It would have took him on a different trajectory. It maybe would have taken Nikki on a different trajectory. So was it that right at the end? Was it then
Was
she
that the
told him
turning point?
about this group of friends, or was it before that?
I think it was before
I
that.
want to know. What was the content of this 111-minute conversation on the Sunday evening? Because that was the last time he had a.
Apparently, the rumors are it was dirty talk or phone, the sex word. I highly doubt that. That sounds exhausting. First of all, for 111 minutes. Second of all, you can't tell me that's all you talked about because I guarantee you talked about more. So,
Talk with her before the murders. What's the end, Chris? What are these dark things, and what is the end? She has been involved in an abusive relationship a few years before, and after that, she removed most of her social media.
But
not sure if she was hiding from someone. She took medications, never told me what for. Wouldn't you ask?
Yeah. Hey, that looks like a lot of pills. What are you taking?
Over to my house 2 times, July the 4th, and
I honestly think it was more than twice. To be honest, that's my partake on it. I think she was over there more than twice. Just saying.
July the 14th. I didn't have to work in July the 4th, so I stayed at Nikki's house in July 3. That morning, I missed tons of phone calls from Shanann. I went outside to call her, and when I called her back, she was obviously furious. Shanann, if you recall, was in North Carolina at the time, so he essentially had the whole of July to really embed himself with this fantasy life with Nichol Kessinger, to do things that he'd never done before, perhaps sexual things that he'd never done before, just more open with his conversation that he could have with her. He felt more comfortable with.
Why couldn't you have like normal conversations? What's your favorite color? What band do you like? Do you have a favorite celebrity? Oh, how many kids you want? No, let's just keep talking about the bad stuff that you should be talking about when you're actually in a relationship. Like, what is all this crap?
With her, he always felt that he was walking on eggshells with Shanann, that he wasn't good enough for her, and maybe Nikki brought him out.
Shanann was too good for you.
So Shanann was furious, and he went back inside, told Nikki he was going home. This was July the 4th. She was in the shower, and I told her I was going home. I decided to stay home for the rest of the day, which made Nikki upset. I think this was the first time she realised in her head that she wasn't number one in my life. That's obviously him telling Sherilyn Nikki wasn't number one in his life. In retrospect,
Suck it up.
At the time, maybe Chris was making Nikki believe that she was number one. Maybe he's telling the truth that she actually wasn't at that point. That
maybe there could have been a chance where he was stringing her along, or she was stringing him along. I mean, we're not going to know until Chris completely blurts it all out and states all this stuff. But again, we're only led to speculation to the point where we only read what we can hear. But again, it's also with interpretation. It's like what you read in the Bible. A lot of people read what's in the Bible and they interpret it differently. These letters, it could be read and completely interpreted differently. Dark for me could be dark, something dark, different, dark to you. Holy cow, there's a lot of D's. Not the good, no, gross, no. But I'm just saying that's quite a lot of stuff to interpret. But again, everybody interprets differently.
the beginning of July. Maybe it took him, a little while to start putting Nicky first, disregarding Shanann and distancing himself from his marriage and from his children. So later though, Nicky came over anyway, and we went over a protein diet eating plan for me. So she made an
The only reason why they were so like together is they say it was more of the communication, but it was more probably attractiveness of the physical sort and sexual attraction. I guarantee most of it, because they sat there and said that they were doing it how many times in a day. So of course, in the beginning of a relationship, everybody's going to be hot and heavy, and then eventually it's going to start wearing off, or you're going to start showing your true colors. And that's why he was starting to question things. He's like, oh, she's actually a little bit crazy, but then she lured him back in with sexy stuff or butt stuff.
excuse to come over. So he'd said he was going home, and perhaps he felt guilty. Perhaps it was quite early in a relationship. Perhaps Nicky wasn't number one in his thought process at that point. But she came over anyway, so she imposed herself on him. And because Chris doesn't know how to say no, then she came over with this excuse of a protein eating plan, and she wormed herself back into his thought process. She tried to make herself increase in status in Chris's mind. She took advantage of Chris in that he can't say no. It's the 14th of July, though, that I have more interest in, I think. I made a video recently saying that I think the conversation that they had on the 14th of July, I think that, again, just pure speculation, I think that was the beginning of his real moving away from his marriage, wanting to distance himself from his marriage, and really thinking of ways beyond divorce that he could get out of this situation. He could get out of this situation completely free, with financial stability. And I think that began, just a hunch, began on the 14th of July. So she didn't look round the house too much on that visit. However, on the July 14th, we were heading back from Shelby Museum. So something that he enjoyed. Just let me turn my emails off the pinging. Shelby Museum, it's a car museum. Nicky knew. Nicky had been watching him. She'd been observing. She knew what he liked, and she wanted to do all the things that Chris liked. So she wanted to get into cars. She took him, went to the car museum. Things that
camping.
Maybe he didn't do with Shanann. She was engaging him in what he wanted to do, rather than him being just a subservient husband doing what Shanann wanted to do. So she's increasing in status in his mind. Stopped at my house before we went to get something to eat. While at the house, he made her playing with Dita, and he led her upstairs, and she saw a lot of pictures of Bella, Celeste, and Shanann. I was downstairs at the time. She came back downstairs with this frozen and dazed, confused look on her face, probably now realising for the first time in her head the family life I lived and the family that would be broken into pieces. She freaked out. Why, Chris? Why are you wanting to leave all of this behind?
She went to the car pouting and having a hissy fit, pretty much because she knew she was the second woman.
I think there's more to it than that, though. Perhaps she wanted a slice of that pie. Perhaps she put herself in Shanann's position. Perhaps she wanted the life with Chris that Shanann had. Perhaps she wanted that house. And perhaps then, very slowly,
she wanted everything
a plan formed in Chris's head, if nothing more, at that point. A plan formed as a way where he could have that same life with Nicky instead of Shanann. Just think about it. I walked over and took her to the couch, and we laid on the couch, and she said, "You have all this more than most people, and we are doing this. Why are we doing this? Are you willing to give all of this up? Is your relationship with your wife that bad?" I told her Shanann and I were drifting apart and we didn't talk anymore. I'm not sure if I believe that fully, but I can see the deficiencies in our relationship today. Well, according to Shanann's text with her friends, everything was fine before she went to North Carolina, and it was during the North Carolina trip that she sensed that, Chris wasn't replying to her texts or her phone calls. He was being very short and brief and just very distant with her. And then when he actually went to North Carolina at the end of July, beginning of August, he was very, very distant. And that's why she spent the weekend in Arizona being so upset. And why, ultimately, Nichol Atkinson was so concerned about her so soon on the morning of the 13th, because she knew what, a bad mental place Shanann was in.
They were talking.
So that explains why Nichol Atkinson acted like a hero, but acted very, very quickly on the 13th of August. And really scuppered any plans Chris had about, hiding evidence better or whatever. Maybe there were genuine questions. Maybe Nikki did ask those questions. Maybe they did have that conversation. Maybe she was asking those questions, though, because she wanted Chris to reassure her that actually he did want those things with her. He didn't want Shanann. Then I also said Shanann and I were actively trying to have a baby before her and
Which was
I
Chris's
met.
idea.
So why did he mention that? Why did he bring that up? Because Shanann was already pregnant. So did he actually, instead of saying we're actively trying to have a baby, was it on this day when Nikki found out that Shanann was pregnant?
She did know.
Or else why would he say it if they were just trying to have a baby? But anyway, Nikki freaked out. She yelled and said our relationship, mine and Shanann's, couldn't have been that bad if Shanann and I were trying to conceive, which is absolutely true. Although many people, they do have babies to hopefully mend relationships that are breaking apart. She was so angry and stormed out to her truck. She sat out there for about 30 minutes texting me while I was inside the house.
That's like a child thing.
I'm interested in where she parked her truck when she was there.
What a
did
child.
She park it at the front, like brazenly, or did she park it around the back? I
Probably
guess
in the
we'll
driveway.
never know that. I somehow calmed her down. Nikki repeatedly reminded me I was the only guy she had ever met that tried to fix problems, smooth out issues, and talk about things. Ironic, as he says himself. Ironic, I never did that with Shanann. Maybe I thought she wouldn't listen. And maybe he didn't do that because he thought she wouldn't listen. And maybe she wouldn't listen. Shanann was headstrong. Everybody said she was a type A personality. She was quite controlling. She said that herself. Yeah, maybe she wouldn't have listened. But Chris, did you try? Yeah. Did you try to make her listen, or did you just not bother? Because there's a difference between trying to be heard, trying your best to be heard, and then just not even saying anything. So Shanann having to wear the trousers because otherwise nothing would get done. There's a big difference there, isn't there? Can you see that, everyone?
I do.
If he tried his best
to
be heard, he tried every way to get her to listen. And
Shanann was writing him letters and text messages and wanting to fix things, and she got a book for self-help and the marriage. Chris didn't do any of that. That's a lie in itself that Chris mentioned.
Wouldn't listen. That's quite different than him not saying anything and her just assuming everything was okay because Chris was just an easygoing guy, whilst he was hating it secretly but just not saying anything. Well, why wouldn't you? You grown man. Why wouldn't you voice that you weren't happy? Why wouldn't you do that? Why would you leave it until you have all this really serious simmering resentment that boils over eventually into violence? Why wouldn't you deal with that? We're all wise in the benefit of hindsight, guys, I understand that, but yeah, Chris, why? Lots and lots of questions about this. Thinking about that made me somewhat sick to my stomach. After all that, Nikki still invited me over to her house like nothing had happened between us.
She's bipolar.
She said, I got mad because I thought I could give you a son, and when you told me you and your wife were trying, that made me upset. Which I guess it would if she wanted
she's the other woman.
Life to be with him, if she wanted something that Shanann had. And she wanted to take him away from Shanann and to have that house, to have children with him, having another baby in the mix, that would take it even further away. So maybe at that time, at that day, was there a conversation to end Shanann's pregnancy?
Yes.
Was there an actual discussion on the 14th? I argue that there might have been. It's that day when they had that conversation about pregnancy that maybe Chris decided, with or without the input from Nikki, decided that he was going to try to end Shanann's pregnancy. After that, we went to the drag races in Bandimore on July the 21st, and then we went camping in the mountains in July 28 and 29. I was at the airport leaving for North Carolina. She sent me a text. Use this time to fix the issues with your wife and enjoy time with your family. Did she mean that though?
That was just in a ruse to show that that he's trying. They just placed little different pieces here and there. Why would you be like in it hardcore with somebody and be like, oh no, go fix things with your wife. It's okay. What mistress has ever said that?
I would argue that was like calling his bluff.
Yes,
saying,
exactly.
Yeah, you go and fix it, but actually I don't want you to fix it. Actually,
exactly
I
what
want
she
you
said.
to come back with the answer. No, I don't want to fix my issues. I just want you. And it becomes clear that that's not exactly what she wanted him to do at all. So the first night I was there, we were at Shanann's parents' house. I texted Nikki and told her I would not be able to call her, only text with her. Nikki responded, why not? Are you with her? Of course he was with her. She knew he was with her.
And she
That's a
hated
ridiculous
it.
thing to say. But obviously, she doesn't want him to fix things. She wants him to tell her that he doesn't want to fix things. And now her worst suspicions, the possibility that he might actually want to.
I just heard some talking and I'm home alone, so I have no idea what's going on. Nobody's around my house, so that kind of got me worried.
With Shanann start to become clear. I thought she wanted me to spend time with my family. Well, she said that, but did she mean it, Chris? I think here is a really good example of how Chris doesn't read between the lines. He's not capable of doing that. So he gets more and more confused when people tell him to do something. He tries to do it and then it's wrong and he doesn't understand why. You know, it's because he's thinking really literally. He's not reading between the lines. And why he was probably getting more and more confused and more out of his head with confusion. It all of a sudden became about her. Of course, Chris, it was always about her. Did you not realise
it was about
that?
you? It's what she wanted.
I realise now, if I'd allowed that to be the turning point for me, it could have changed everything. It could indeed. But unfortunately, that's not what played out. Like the 14th of July could have been a turning point. The lazy dog night could have been a turning point. There were a lot of potential turning points, but Chris, you let this happen. I argue because actually you wanted it to happen. And thinking now in retrospect, maybe you regret it now because you're spending the rest of your life in jail. Perhaps not because you murdered your entire family. Perhaps you're thinking in retrospect how you could have changed your life for the better without anybody dying, without murdering anybody. Maybe you're realising now that, you know, that was a bad move, wasn't it? I was not able to make that choice then. I really wasn't. Why? Why weren't you? Was it because you were completely infatuated? Right, you know, addicts will choose their drug of choice over their family, over their children. They'll commit crimes for that addiction. And then when that addiction abates, when they've got that under control, then they start to see things very differently. So is he saying here that he really wasn't because he was out of his head? He was out of his head with infatuation, essentially, with that dopamine rush that you get.
He was thinking with the wrong head, if you get my drift.
When you're addicted to something. Whatever had hold of my mind did not allow me to go into making these kind of rational decisions. That is true, but don't externalise. It was your problem. It was your fault. There were many possible turning points where you could have prevented this from happening. Addiction or no addiction. The vast majority of addicts don't murder their entire family because of their addiction. Let's just make that one clear as well. Obviously, Nikki was insisting that I was making more time with her no matter what. First night there was the first night I gave Shanann the Oxycodone. The first night, did he give it her more than once, does that mean? The first night I was there.
But see, I think Shanann was she's very smart in her whole what she consumes and stuff like that. So you got to believe that Chris possibly put it in a drink and made it more more of a discretion when he's like, oh, here's a cup of water, but he had put the oxycodone inside the drink for it to dissolve and she drank it. Who knows? But I guarantee he's not like give her pills and we're like, take this. Like, she was a smart woman. So don't tell me that she didn't know what he had possibly given her.
was the first night I gave Shanann the
It didn't
oxycodone.
work.
So did he give her oxy more than once? It leads me to believe he did.
Well, there was oxycodone also found down in their basement in one of those buckets. You could see the oxycodone bottle.
By that wording, maybe that's unfortunate wording, or maybe he actually did give her oxy more than once. I thought it would cause her to have a miscarriage. I had looked upon the internet and read about it, and 80 milligrams of oxy should have caused her to lose the baby. The next 8 days, I ignored Shanann every night. I did this so I could disappear and talk to Nikki for hours. So Nikki got exactly what she wanted.
While he
Nikki
was
got
there.
the upper hand. Nikki was in control. There was no way he could then back out.
But do you see where I'm coming from so far? Why are we defending Nichol Kessinger? Why?
Because Nikki had got him under her grip. Because Chris had spent his entire life being controlled by women. And Nikki was just now his new mistress in every sense of the word. He was so disconnected now from Shanann and the girls that he could literally be controlled in any way that she wanted. It was obvious during these conversations that she didn't want me to spend time with my family or try to make things better. Absolutely she didn't. That's exactly what she didn't want, and that's why she said use this time to fix it with your family. She didn't want him to, but Chris, taking things literally, didn't realise that. She had nothing good at all to say about my family life. This twisted my head. So she started to tell him things that were bad about his family life. Of course you wouldn't have anything
trying to manipulate.
good to say, because she's having an affair with you, Chris. She wants you for her very own.
She's going to say whatever
she wants your
he wanted
life.
to hear.
So she's twisting his head. And he's too weak and too cowardly to pull himself out of it
Well,
at
let's
that point.
defend her.
Even though in retrospect, he now sees that there were many turning points. I knew I should be giving them attention, but I was unable to. No, you weren't. You were able to. You just didn't want to.
You just didn't choose to.
Because you were too weak to pull yourself away from your mistress, who was now completely in control of you. I felt like a programmed robot, and that's probably how he's felt his entire life. Things started to not make sense for me. I kind of think he's starting to really suffer psychologically. He's starting to perhaps go into an element of psychosis.
Good.
I might argue.
I mean,
he wasn't sleeping. He was in a state of complete confusion. Nothing, however, excuses what he did, because he could have sought help. He could have made that turning point.
I'm thinking about this. I need help.
However hard it would have been,
Never did.
he could have done that. When I returned to Colorado, I saw Nikki after work. I went to her place in my work truck. Any hope of repairing my marriage pretty much was over when Nikki gave me a key to her place. I saw this as a pretty big step, because what woman gives another man a key to her house without wanting to make a big step?
She did that with Jim.
Well, maybe Chris didn't know this, but leave Jim alone.
Yeah, exactly.
Had a key to Nikki's place.
Exactly.
So maybe from Nikki's point of view, it wasn't so much a big step that Nikki gave him a key, but to Chris,
it was a big deal.
Who'd lived quite a sheltered, probably life. He'd been married for a long time. He didn't understand relationships. He didn't understand social convention. He really didn't know Nikki very well. And the fact that she gave him a key kind of meant everything to Chris, whereas to Nikki, it didn't. She gave her friends, like, leave Jim alone. He had a key. So it wasn't big to Nikki. It was convenience to Nikki. But to Chris, it meant, oh, yeah, she means business. She's going to be my life now. She wants me. And now I've got to do what I need to do to get rid of my family. Maybe that was his thought process in a warped kind of way. I told her that Shanann and I were going to get a separation and that the marriage was going to end, but that she was still actively trying to fix our marriage. I think this was the day I realised I had to do something, because I couldn't have my family and her at the same time.
Called separation.
So I would argue actually that thought process happened way before. I think that process began on the 14th of July. Just my opinion.
I agree.
Opinion alone, but I think That was it. The last time I saw Nikki was on August the 11th when we went out to eat. That's when Shanann was in Arizona and I had gotten a babysitter that night, which is something I never did before while Shanann was away. I told her I was going to a game with some guys because I had won the lottery at work. Nikki and I talked about our future plans and she told me about apartments that she had found for me. So it was all going too fast for Chris at this point, and he just felt he had no way out. He had no way out other than to murder his family. She said she was looking at apartments that were big enough for me and the kids. She said after I had my own apartment, we could move at a slower pace, which of course he wouldn't want to do because he was completely addicted. She's trying to pull away at this point. She's trying to say, you've got to have your own life. He didn't understand that. He didn't understand what she was saying there. He was just confused and thinking, oh my God, I have to go back to family life now. I have to go back, and I'm not going to get my addiction fix so often. The rest, I think, is at this point completely unavoidable. I think he knew on the Sunday at that kid's party, he knew what he was going to do. I think it's true that he knew that it was the last night he was going to be tucking his kids in on the Sunday night. This told me her main objective was to get me away from my family and specifically Shanann. Well, that's what you told her you wanted to do. This is the thing. Yeah, she was trying to get him away. She was, because she wanted him to herself, but she was trying to now back away and perhaps say, no, Chris, you've got to do this yourself, which is confusing him because up to that point, he thought that he was going to, spend his entire life and she be his entire world and her be his entire world. And Nikki, didn't want that. She wanted a life of her own as well. She wanted to have her cake and eat it, basically.
I was just going to say that same thing.
Was going to have, but she wanted to have her own life too. Nothing wrong with that, but,
but don't
be your own life. Nothing wrong with that. But
don't get pissed off when you're involving yourself in somebody else's life, but then you want your own time to yourself. That's contradicting yourself.
Chris couldn't see any of this. Very much a black and white thinker. He doesn't see shades of grey. He isn't able to read between the lines, and he isn't able to think for himself. In a mind that maybe is starting to lose grip with reality, is starting to go through perhaps periods of dissociation, perhaps. That's
hopefully
a
one
real
day he squeals
recipe
100%.
For disaster, as we obviously saw. She said she felt that we'd been taking things really fast since we were together pretty much every night, possible in June and July. She started to tell her friends about me, and I could tell she was making plans for our future together.
And then she said to her interrogators that she never told her friends about him, besides Charlotte, when that was a lie itself.
I don't know why, because I had a beautiful wife and beautiful kids at home. But he didn't want them anymore. He'd completely disconnected from them by this time.
Men would have killed
There
for
was
that.
nothing she could offer me that I wasn't able to get from home, except I could be myself around her. Maybe if they'd got into, let's say, Shanann got divorced from Chris and Nikki and Chris had got into a relationship, perhaps the same thing would have happened, because Chris, even though he was able to be himself around Nikki was definitely in control. She would have done what she wanted. She would have had her own life. She wanted everything Shanann had in the way Shanann had it, but she wanted to have her own life as well. And Chris wouldn't have been able to handle that. He would have been in exactly the same situation that he ended up in with Shanann. But of course, he couldn't see that at the time.
He wanted to swap out his old model with his new model.
The future, obviously.
Like a
that
car.
Was not a reason to get rid of my family. Go figure. Of course it wasn't. Shanann did not do anything for me to get rid of her. There you go, Shanann haters.
So there are people that out there that will sit there and bash Shanann because of some BS crap. But yet Chris says Shanann did not do anything for me to get rid of her. It's not Shanann's fault. We know this with anybody that has a right mind in their head. It is not Shanann's fault. Shanann tried to make her marriage work. She tried to make her family loving and fun with smiles and enjoyment, and Chris didn't care.
Chris's own words, Shanann did not do anything for me to get rid of her. I don't know if all of this is common knowledge or not, but that's regarding Nikki from me. Everything else is probably in the discovery. Well, you'd be surprised at some of the things that are not in the discovery. You know, I'd like to see the Vivint. I'd like to see Nikki's GPS, please. Weld
They
County,
won't show
DA
us.
Rourke, if you're listening, release Nikki's GPS, because that will put paid to a lot of
And all
speculation.
her phone records.
It absolutely will. Chris goes on to say, enough of Nikki's relationship. So I'm going to end it there.
Yeah.
I hope you found this.
He sits there and talks about more of the kids. Like, this man should not be able to have fun by watching games and so forth like that. But again, like I said before, how can you defend a woman that has all of these bad things? That she manipulated Chris. She was a child and herself. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm a child. I collect toys. I enjoy video games. But I'm not going to murder my family. I'm not going to involve myself with a married woman, like reversing the cards, and play a part in a possible annihilation of that family. I'm going to be an adult and actually know what I want in life. I'm going to hopefully keep my family together, love them, enjoy them, and so forth. But no, Nichol wanted nothing but destruction and to have fun at her discretion, and she didn't care what was in her path. But again, for those that are NKers that are on her side, please tell me why you defend her. Why you defend her. Yeah, there are people out there that say she is proven or she is innocent until proven guilty. Well, then let us have that chance to prove her innocence. We can't prove her innocence because nobody wants to, because they think that there's nothing wrong when there's hundreds of different things. It may not be in that 2,000 pages, but we can see the messages. I'm not going to reiterate myself. I'm just saying for those NKers that defend her, why? I can tell you why I'm not going to defend her, because she was a manipulative snake that infiltrated herself in a married man's life, destroyed a family, and maybe she wasn't physically hands-on, but there's a lot of other felonies that she had crossed while being with Chris, and yet she got nothing. So please take care, be safe, keep nerding on. Also, don't forget to subscribe on both channels, myself and Michelle After Dark. She's got tons, if not thousands, of other cases that she goes through, and she is a good channel to watch. And keep it real and keep it safe, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.